Hey, good night and good morning again. It is 12:48 a.m. and I wanted to take the time to share the lesson that I did today, or yesterday technically, since it's after 12 a.m., that I did at Philadelphia Congregational Christian Church in Selma, Indiana. It was a good morning. So I hope that you're edified by this. I hope that you're encouraged by this. The title, if you haven't already seen in the description, is Our Only Hope, the Gospel of Jesus Christ. COVID-19 crisis, there have been hundreds and thousands of deaths all throughout the world, specifically, here at home, here in America. Many hearts have been broken, tears have been shed, and people have wondered where God is during all of this. Many people are thinking thoughts such as, where's God? Where's He at? Has He left us? Is He punishing us? And you can imagine all of the other ideas and theories of why God is letting this happen. Regardless of whatever the reason may be, though, I can assure you that God, put that on mute, God is still in control. He is still sovereign, and He has gone absolutely nowhere. He is the King, and He is fully aware of what is going on. During the past month, there have been many people broken into. Their windows have been smashed. They've lost everything. Specifically, small-owned businesses, these have been shut down simply because they haven't been in business for a while, whatever the reason is. Small-town businesses have been shut down due to riots that have been going on. Windows have been smashed. Riots that have been going on. So due to the riots currently going on throughout the nation, many people from ages 3 and up have died. There's so much chaos. There's so much murder. There's so much hate. Right now. Not sure about you, but as I see what's on the news every time I turn it on, I ask myself, what is going on? Problem. What is the source of the problem so we can fix this? Well, the reason I bring this up, these current events, the reason I bring up these current events is because I believe that God, specifically in the Bible, actually gives us the answer to this problem. In fact, I believe that God is very specific about why these things. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 22, Jesus said the following, "What comes out of a man, that defiles a man. Out of the heart of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lewdness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride. All these evil things come from within and defile a man." So, from that scripture, from reading what Jesus said, the reason why we're seeing all of these riots, the reason why people are killing people, the reason why people are continuing to do these things, heart problem. To be more specific, it's due to a sin problem. But rest assured, though, that this is not something that God is just now experiencing. He has a huge resume of dealing with people who live in sin, who do terrible things. So I want to backtrack. I want to go all the way back to Genesis chapter 1, specifically verses chapter 1 to 3. In Genesis chapter 1 to 3, we see Adam and Eve eat the forbidden fruit from the tree which God told them not to do. What they did was, rather than obeying God, they chose to do what they wanted to do. Kind of sounds familiar. There's many times in my life I'm given the choice. This is what God would want me to do because I know it from the scriptures. But then I'm tempted to do what I want to do. Sure, I'm not alone in that. But rather than obeying God, they chose to do what they wanted to do. Eve chose to listen to Satan rather than listen to God. Adam and Eve were both enticed by their desires as perfectly described in James chapter 1, verse 14 to 15, which says the following. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. Before the fall of mankind, everything was perfect. Everything God created was perfect. It was good. After Adam and Eve chose to sin, the ground was cursed, death, and women, you have to go through pain when you give birth. And I can only imagine that. I don't have to go through it personally. All of us here today, well, right here, Facebook, to be inevitably affected by Adam and Eve's choice. Romans chapter 5 verse 12 says the following. Just as through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, death spread to all men because all sinned. So when you continue reading on in Genesis, specifically chapters 4 to 10, you will see that God, in those chapters, during that time, could no longer be patient with people. Genesis chapter 6, verses 5 to 6 says the following. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. That he made human beings on the earth, and that his heart was deeply troubled. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? When you look on the news, when you see everything going around, it makes me think of this passage. Every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. So if you remember correctly, how did God respond to the sin that was going on during the days of Noah? When Noah was preparing the ark, how did God respond? What did God do? Well, he killed because of sin. The Apostle Paul tells us, I believe it's in Romans 3, that the wages of sin is death. One sin, the payment for that sin is death. These people died because of their sin, except Noah and his family. Now, if you ever get a chance to go to the Ark Encounter in Kentucky, they have Ken Ham has a specific spot devoted towards children books that are surrounded by the global flood. And what these books tend to portray is that the global flood was something cute. You have all the giraffes on these books, all these animals. These books look very, very, they tend to send off a vibe that was fun. Well, they have a section devoted to that to call these books out, pretty much. In other words, they're calling these books out because they want people to know these books are portraying a wrong image. The reason why the global flood happened is because sin was continually going on. All the inclination of the thoughts in a man's heart was only evil all the time. So God the flood, except Noah and his family. But unfortunately, the problem of sin did not stop after the flood. Do you remember what Noah did in the flood? He got drunk. He got drunk that night. Believe it? He got drunk. Someone who was devoted and walking with God, such as Noah, after the victory came, he chose to sin. Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? Speak for myself. That's happened with me many times. Noah got drunk. In the Bible, we see this recurring theme of God graciously delivering his people from the consequences of their sin over and over again, time after time, but yet for some reason, these people continually choose to turn their backs against God to embrace their sins. If we're honest with ourselves, how often do we do the same thing? So since we can see that the problem of sin goes all the way back to Adam and Eve, into the days of Noah, and afterwards, if you continue to read the Old Testament, God's patience and deliverance of Israel constantly, since we can see today that it seems like every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart is evil all the time, to me this begs the question, how do we fix this problem? How do we and where do we as a human race find hope in this dire time of need? If you remember the title of this message, our only hope, the gospel of Jesus Christ, that is the answer. The answer is the gospel of Jesus Christ. By ourselves, we can do absolutely nothing to fix these problems. But through the gospel of Jesus Christ, lives can change, broken hearts can be mended, and love for our neighbors can be reignited. It can happen, and Jesus will do it. Sometimes we're tempted to believe that creating new laws here in America against certain crimes will actually stop them from happening. I see laws against drunk driving, speeding, murder, etc. But yet I still see people breaking them. Likewise, in Christianity, some Christians try to add their own legalistic rules and regulations to the gospel of Jesus Christ. They somehow help the Christian. This does not help the Christian, nor does it help defeat the problem of sin. Sin is a deeper root within the heart of a person. In fact, when a Christian chooses to add laws and regulations to the gospel of Jesus Christ, he throws a burden on himself and those who he's teaching. He throws a yoke of slavery on himself and those who he's teaching. But if you read Galatians chapter 5, it says we're not under a yoke of slavery anymore. So adding laws does not defeat the problem of sin. It does not take that away. It does more harm than good to the Christian. In Romans chapter 5, verse 20, Paul tells us that being actually increased his desire to sin. Creating laws does not get rid of the sin problem. For instance, if you put a child in a room with a Hershey's bar, sitting in the middle of the floor, and you tell that child not to touch that Hershey's chocolate bar as you leave the room, do you really think that he's not going to touch that Hershey's chocolate bar? I will testify to you right now. 3 children under 4. I have them. It ain't going to happen. That kid's going to demolish that chocolate bar. That's what's going to happen. Adding laws and regulations to the finished work of Jesus Christ does absolutely no good for the Christian, nor does it do any good for the Christian adding the laws. I got to emphasize that. The gospel of Jesus Christ is a gospel of freedom. It is a gospel of liberation. It is a gospel of undeserved grace and mercy. It is a gospel that is free of charge. It is a gospel that is a gift from God. This is good news. It's a gift from God. God has done with our sin what we as human beings could not do. No amount of works done for God save a person from the wrath of God that is to come. Without Jesus Christ, spiritually bankrupt. Without Jesus Christ, hope for mankind. Without the healing, we're hopeless. Without Jesus Christ, the sins of mankind cannot be forgiven and will not be forgiven. Through the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is real hope. Indeed, the gospel of Jesus Christ is our only hope. In John chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said the following, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. In Romans chapter 1, verse 16, Paul says, For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes. And in Revelation 22:17, the invitation to everyone is given. The Spirit and the bride say, come. And let him who hears say, come. And let him who thirsts come. Whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely. So, if you get the chance today, or throughout the rest of your week, share the gospel with someone that you know is not a child of God. In person, through Facebook, it doesn't matter how you share it. This is what people need right now, in today, especially with everything going on within this country. People need hope. People need the gospel of Jesus Christ. Many people know about Jesus, but they don't know him. This is what life is all about. The gospel of Jesus Christ is our only hope. And if you've ever wondered what the gospel of Christ actually is, because I've asked people before and you'll get different answers. This is what the Apostle Paul says about the gospel of Christ. Here is his description of the gospel of Jesus Christ. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 1 to 11. Paul says this, Moreover, brethren, I declare to you the gospel which I preached to you, which also you received and in which you stand, by which also you are saved, if you hold fast the word which I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. For I delivered to you first that which I also, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was rose again on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he was seen by Cephas, that is Peter. After that, he was seen by over 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain to the present. But some have fallen asleep. After that, he was seen by James, then by all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen by me also, as one born out of due time. And then Paul goes on to say the following, verse 9, For I am the least of the apostles, who am not worthy to be called an apostle, because I persecuted the church of God. But by the grace of God I am what I am. And his grace toward me was not in vain, but I labored more abundantly than they all. Yet, not I, but the grace of God which was with me. Therefore, whether it was I or they, so we preached, and so you believe. As Christians, by the grace of God, we are who we are. And by the grace of God, anyone can be saved through the gospel of Jesus Christ, by believing the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is our only hope. Thanks. God bless you guys.